Aloha! We are live on Unity Transmissions with Tess and Bliss, and we've been having some great conversations in consciousness together. And we are together creating and building the largest cosmic network, communications network for peace. And so we can talk about that today and the new consciousness that is really coming into the planet. And we're super excited about these new systems and structures that are being downloaded to much of the feminine consciousness on the planet. And really calling in our human family to step up and step into their roles and positions on the planet together. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tess, and so Tess can say hello.
Hi everyone, this is Tess Athena from Gaia Warriors, and yeah, I'm so happy to be here with Bliss and on this amazing portal that we're on here. It's on the Princess Ley Lines here in Venice, sitting on a huge rose quartz crystal slab. So it's been really, really beautiful being here because everything that we're anchoring into these grids are then getting amplified. And so we're really calling in a team that is in coherence. And we were actually just talking about how beautiful it was, our timing, because we originally met 2 years ago at Mount Shasta, and I was doing a water blessing ceremony. And yeah, it was really potent. We were on the headwaters. We had this huge medicine wheel. We were doing this beautiful ceremony, and Bliss just came walking up in the most divine timing, and she was able to add her energy into that ceremony. And what was so potent about that ceremony was we were there to anchor in some high vibration because the corporation called Crystal Geyser, they were using the aquifer there to drain the aquifer and then sell them in plastic bottles to China. And that water is, on Mount Shasta, it's on the root chakra, so it's really, really powerful, charged water, and that water should not be sold. That water should be for the people, and people from all around the world come to get that water. And so Crystal Geyser were draining the aquifer for profit, and the Winnemucca tribe that were there were fighting this, and we're trying to get Crystal Geyser to stop from opening up a plant to create more water bottles and draining the aquifers completely. And so we went there to anchor in our prayers and our good vibration, and a few months later the project actually got pulled and we won, and the plant didn't happen. And it's a beautiful sign that when we come together in the power of prayer, that we can actually achieve something. And that's what I always talk about with sacred activism and the way the indigenous do activism, because they're the ones that are the stewards. They've been the original stewards of this planet for so long, and they hold the codes of how to be in harmony with the planet. And they're the ones that I see that are really on the front lines, protecting the forest, protecting the water from these oil companies, from these corporations that are trying to destroy the planet for profit. And the way that they do it is through prayer and ceremony and medicine wheels. And it's really, really beautiful. And it's really changed my view, because I've been an environmental activist for 10 years. And in my younger years, I was a very angry person at the system, and I would go to these protests, and these protests would be rooted in anger. And I realized when I became spiritually awakened that I was giving my power away by being in that low vibrational state. And also, when you're giving your energy to something through a negative emotion, and you're also, by putting all your focus, you're perpetuating that, what you're fighting against, to exist even more by giving your energy to it, but also by being in a lower vibrational state, you're giving your power, and you're not doing it from a place of neutrality, which is where we should all react now, and that's from a place of power. And that's where I see the indigenous people. They do it from a place of neutrality, but also from a place of love and compassion for the earth, and the intentions are for the earth, and there's no charge. Because once there's a charge behind your energy, you're literally draining and giving your power away. And so I call it sacred activism, and that's what I'm always promoting now, is to be an activist, but to do it in a way through prayer and ceremony and through love and compassion, and to not doing this whole us versus them and blaming, because I feel like that's a lot of the activism comes from that kind of, separation and polarization and us versus them mentality, which is just causing more duality, just perpetuating even more of this victimization and this perpetrator energy, which just, it's not healthy, and it's not helping us to create this one unity consciousness. So I didn't really think that conversation was going to go this way, but here we are.
That's what we love about these conversations, and really staying in the moment of what really wants to be shared, what is the highest vibration. And so that's a really beautiful piece. I'm like super stoked with the way this transmission started out, because of course when we share, there's just intelligent communication occurring all the time. And a lot of people say, oh, we should start a podcast, we should share what's coming through us. And I really like to jump into things real time when great conversation is coming through, so that we can just allow for that flow and that thread. And so it's wonderful when we set our ego aside and we just allow this higher consciousness to come through us. We get to discover what really wants to be created, what really wants to be perpetuated. And that's what's happening right now in the world. Each time each one of us collapses polarity, collapses charge within us, we are being informed by a higher consciousness from what we could say like our future world. It's like our future selves and our future world is drawing us forward. And a lot of people say to me, I want more connection with my higher self. And so one of the ways to get that connection, to get clarity for change and transformation to occur through us, is to understand how to find coherence in ourselves. And we talk about this all the time, every time we share, that coherence is key. And why do we repeat it over and over? So that those reflections of ourselves can begin to really accept and discover that coherence is the key to creation. And it is the key to higher creation. It's the key to the dissolution of perpetuation of things that we no longer choose to create or experience in our world. And so everything that you shared there is very powerful. The indigenous have held these sacred tools, this sacred wisdom, for millennia. And those who are very connected to nature and connected to the natural world understand that being one with the universe, one with creation, is about having a harmonious relationship with. And the way that that harmonious relationship comes in is through coherence. So we're going to repeat it again, even though we've said it many times before. What is coherence? In our human body, we have two hemispheres of the brain. And when we make the union between those hemispheres so strong, they operate as one brain. And when the brain comes together, which can come together in very easy ways, like crossing our wrists, crossing our ankles, clasping our hands, closing our eyes, and deep breathing, yogic breath work, all the breath work that we do outside of one nostril and then the other, a lot of postures in yoga where you do crossovers, riding a bike, going for a run, all of these kinds of actions bring us into a very coherent state. This is why a lot of people speak about being in the zone. And being in the zone comes from doing, for a lot of people, athletics. And so then when we're in the zone, because the brain operates in such a way that it's one brain, we move into a more alpha brainwave state, which is closer to sort of like daydreaming. And in that more relaxed and lucid state, our capacity for creation becomes very powerful and profound. So, what we like to say is it's harder to change matter from matter than it is to change matter from a more expansive place. And everything that you're sharing about the indigenous teachings is so powerful. And to have experienced the power of your union and communion, and that we met on that incredible day. And I didn't know what your ceremony was about specifically related to the Geyser Corporation, but I did know that you were coming to do water blessings. And one of the things that was beautiful as well is that the masculine people who came to the gathering were really holding space for the feminine to share their voice, and that was something that was very powerful on that day as well. And one of the things when you were sharing the power of prayer, I had a beautiful experience with an indigenous elder on the winter solstice of 2019, and we were with a Mayan elder, Jose Munoz, and we were doing an all-night cacao ceremony around the fire. And the elder was sharing with all of we, one at a time. He would go up to each person, and there was probably about 50 people at the gathering, so this went on all night. And he had tobacco for the fire, and he was inviting everyone to make offerings for the fire. And he was explaining the technology of the fire that night. And he said that he was so filled with reverence that so many people, white people, he said, had shown up, that he felt that, a lot of humans had forgotten the technology of the elementals and the technology of prayer. And he was so encouraged that night that we all showed up and that we had deep reverence for the power of prayer. And he called it technology. And so, our lives have taken us into all of this external technology in our world, and technology that requires the mining of minerals and elements and components to make little wires and little hard drives and all these things, when the technology is all within our inner world. And remembering how to use that again is not difficult. That's the beautiful thing about what you share. And so I feel like this is a huge inspiration for today's sharing, because this is where, for me, I'm the most inspired to share is our capacity for creation and our capacity to manifest. And when we bring our manifestations into alignment with coherence, that's when we manifest the best. So it feels like humanity is on the precipice of moving into the new discovery of how creation occurs, and not creation from the old manifestation ideas that have been compounded, the secret and things like that. To truly manifest sustainability is to always live life in prayer. And that's the difference. It's like, from my own journeys of walking the grid lines, working with the energy of the elementals and the planet and so on, what I learned is that everything is sentient and living. And so then from that place, we begin to realize the prayer. We're always in the prayer. The prayer, it always occurs moment by moment through us. And our relationship with everything in our world begins to shift. And we no longer have that polarized duality perception. Something begins to occur in our physicalness that up-levels the chemistry in the body, that we're actually experiencing bliss. And from that place of bliss, everything and anything is possible. And so we can bring great transformation to this world as we perceive it by bringing all of our awareness and connection back to the internal technology of the self. So, love playing in that conversation together. So thank you so much for the great opening, Miss Tess.
Yeah, and it's really given me a lot of reverence for the way the indigenous carry their wisdom and the way that they've been living on this earth for so long, and they literally have been adopting that leave no trace. You know, they treat every being, every tree, every rock, every animal as their brothers and sisters. And I actually had the honor and privilege of being in Minnesota for a pipeline action, and I got to spend 3 to 4 weeks with Indigenous people there, and I had the honor of doing a vision quest for them, and we had sacred fire, and every day we would honor the elements and call in all the elementals and all the guardians of that land and the ancestors, and it was so profound and so beautiful, and it really touched my heart to see the purity of their desire to protect the water, the purity and of their desire to protect the trees, and how they would be willing to literally put their life on the line, you know. And I actually also met a man called Kurikindi who grew up in the rainforest in the Amazon, and you know he grew up running naked as a barefoot child, running around the Amazon, and he actually met a woman, a white woman from England, and they fell in love and they had a child. And these oil companies were coming into their land, and in order to tell their story, they came back to England to tell their story, because you know when you're in South America, and it's a lot more different than it is to the rest of the world, because the threat there is very real. Like, they literally, when I say put their lives on the line, like, people in South America are actually getting killed over things like this. And I was just in so much awe of like how the indigenous people care so much that they would literally risk their life for a tree, for the water, because they know that it's a living sentient being. They know Gaia is a living sentient being. And for me, when I risked my life, I was just risking arrest. So for me to meet a selfless hero like this that cares so much, it just put me in so much awe and reverence for that human, and for all the humans that are fighting this, especially the indigenous, because they're the ones really doing it the most. And it makes sense to me why since colonization has happened so much, that these indigenous have been targeted, because they hold the codes of sovereignty, they hold the codes of how to live without the system, and the powers that be, or whatever you want to call them, even though they are a part of us, and I know that that is us playing out a role so that we can learn. The reason why the indigenous were taken out of the way that they were living and put into the schools and told that their stories, their languages had to be changed, and all their traditions had to be changed, because they didn't want the codes of the sovereignty to be spread out to the rest of the world. They didn't want us to be able to live without this system that's been placed upon us. And it makes so much sense to me now why that has happened and why it's continuing to happen. But I do see a shift happening, in the sense that people are waking up and realizing that we need to live more simpler, and we need to go back to our roots, our way of living in community, living more in connection with the land. Because the reason why I feel people are so unhappy, or their vibration isn't where it's supposed to be in a really more blissful state, is because they're disconnected from nature, from the mother, and they're living in these cities where they're disconnected from the source of their food. They're disconnected from the rivers, and their water's coming from and from a tap that's got chemicals in it. Their food is coming from a grocery store, all packaged. You know, they're disconnected from the forests because they're living in these concrete jungles, and because they're disconnected from the nature and from our intrinsic connection to all oneness, I feel like that's where the disharmony is coming. And so it's really very enlightening and positive for me to see all these communities that are starting up, especially around Costa Rica and all over the world. Really, you're seeing people are moving away from the cities and they're moving into places that are in community with nature. But then also in the cities, I'm seeing positive change happen too, because I'm seeing people in the cities are growing food in their little apartments, or, you know, there's community gardens that are happening here in Venice. I've seen there's one in Santa Monica and there's one here in Venice. There's a community garden. So even if you are living in the cities, I'm seeing more community projects are opening up, and people are learning to come together in community. And I think that that's so important, because, you know, from the lifestyle of living in an apartment block where you're disconnected, you don't even know who your neighbor is. That's not the way that we're meant to live. We're meant to live in community. We're meant to help each other out. We're meant to be connected to nature. So it's really amazing to see. And even in my own town now, they're actually starting a food forest so that, you know, the whole community can have access to this. And it goes back to Michael Tellinger, who we're both really big fans of, and he speaks about the Ubuntu movement, and it's about contributionism and creating these systems where everybody contributes to the whole, and that's creating that oneness. And it's like makes me so happy to know that this movement is taking, you know, it's taking movement around the world, because people are creating these systems that are free energy devices that can power the whole town, and food forests that can feed the town. And I'm just seeing more community is starting to build, and I feel like that is the step in the right direction, is to build community. And if you haven't looked up Michael Tellinger, look his Ubuntu project up, because it's about everybody in the town putting in a couple of hours towards a project that will benefit the whole town. And you only have to do like 3 hours or 6 hours a week, so you can still do your normal job. But eventually you start doing these projects and they start creating abundance for the town, that you can actually quit your normal job and only do the projects that benefit the whole. And everybody gets a chance to have their project be birthed, and everybody contributes their skills and their talents to this project. And I just think it's such a beautiful idea, and I really love the idea of being local and starting small. So one small town can save the world, and having that ripple out. And yeah, so that's kind of where that led that to me.
Well, I love, as you're sharing, you know, the motorcycles going by, the car traffic, and so on. And we felt to sit outside today and together, and just, there's been something very deep and rich for me in my own journey, which is that I have experienced many different ways of living on my journey. And I started traveling when I was 19 and put a backpack on my back, and started going into very off the beaten path places. And I was very guided to go into a lot of areas that were called war-torn zones. And one of the greatest discoveries in my early 20s is that humans on the planet are inherently good. And I would be, traveled very far east in Indonesia, and at that time tourists just weren't really in those places, and it was rainy season, and towns would be flooded out completely, and the bus would be going through the town, and it would be like 4 feet of water coming up the side of the bus, and people would be sitting on the little porches of their little bamboo homes with water running like you couldn't even see the earth of the village, because everything was flooded. It was kind of like they were sitting in their floating tiny homes. And I had this incredible experience one time. I was traveling with my partner at the time and a couple from Ireland. And the people started to see us on the bus, and we were these 4 tourists. And they started to wade off their balconies through the water that was rushing quite fast, to come up to the side of the bus and reach their hands up so that we could put our hands together on the glass. And that was one of my journeys and experiences, that showed me that humans are inherently good, and that the whole divide and conquer separation concept of war was all inserted upon consciousness from an, we'll just say, from an entity perspective of who humans really are. And maybe it was an experiment, maybe it was a test, but the holograph is done. That hologram is done. That overlay on consciousness is absolutely, completely done. And so everything that you're sharing, Tess, we are in the precipice, and we're in it already right now, of humanity experiencing what it is to truly be human. And what it is to be truly human is to truly be good and to live from the heart and care about each other. And we see this all the time in the world when, natural disasters, the banks of the river flood, and a town gets flooded out. Everyone comes together to serve a greater purpose together. And so that's really what the whole pandemic on the planet was, a trigger to have humans go deep and create something that's not catastrophic, and simultaneously had humans go deeply within themselves to examine their beliefs and to really examine their beliefs of separation, because everyone got separated and placed in their own little cocoon called their home. And inside of that separation, all of the dissonant energy that was running in the fields of humans got cleared out of the energetic field. And so that's why we're seeing such incredible shifts now, because those lenses of perception of separation and war and competition and survival of the fittest, and the notion that, it's like we're living in a jungle, all those notions are quickly falling off the vibrational scale that the collective consciousness physically is rising into. And so we are on the precipice of a whole new world, which we know we're in the process and simultaneous. In time languaging, we would say that this transformation is about to speed up in such miraculous ways of awakening that allow every single human to wake up. No judgment of where that human has come from. We love it. Sound effects department. No judgment of where that human has come from, because the metaphor in nature, it's always an inside job. Nature is transforming us cellularly from within us, and that transformation is becoming very apparent in what we call our external world. And we share about this often, but the metaphor of the caterpillar turning to the butterfly. The butterfly has imaginal cells within it, which make up less than 1% of the caterpillar's form. Those cells, those imaginal cells, have the codes to actually create the structure of the butterfly. And so that's why a huge and yet seemingly small percentage-wise of the population is suddenly waking up and super active and just like it's the get stuff done. Because this portion of the cellular network of our human family are the imaginal cells. And as we do podcasts like this together, as we do filming like this together, as people are following their inspiration, their purpose, and their heart that says, you're not doing that job anymore, no matter how much fear one might have to leave the comfort zone. It doesn't matter, because if we are one of the ones who hold the codes of the imaginal cells, It is the miracle coordinate for us to wake up. That's what's happening right now, and we're organizing, we're finding each other through synchronicity. It's all coming together really fast. Nothing needs to be forced. This is about listening from the purity of our heart, which guides us. It's our internal GPS to guide us where to be, what to do, what to focus on, what to release, what to let go of. Because the imaginal cells have turned on. And as this network of imaginal cells connects, we create the structure of the butterfly. And as the structure is created, then all of human consciousness awakens. When the structure is created, when all of the right connections have been made in the neural networks of the imaginal cell people, could just be one phone call, could just be a smile or a look in the eye. That structure comes into place, the entire human family wakes up because the container is ready. And that's what we're on the precipice of. So one of the things that we spoke of is taking inspired action. And inspired action, because you were saying the power of prayer to create, you discovered the power of prayer. It's like we don't have to go out and do a lot of things. So there's this connection to the power of prayer to create, and simultaneous action steps are necessary in the physical. Only inspired action. That's all we need to take, because the inspired actions are the actions that are guiding the imaginal cells. And to understand that it's no, this is why the Hopi prophecy said at this time, the time of the lone wolf is over, meaning no one is doing it alone anymore. And it's felt like for a lot of people that they've been out in their own little corner of the world doing something all on their own. That is no more, because energetically, it is our energetic systems and how we have transformed them from the inside out that have unlocked new information from what we call a higher library or a higher Akash. So just the inspired action as it comes. Take that inspired action, because one simple action in the physical could be the final simple action that is required for the entire family, the entire planet, the entire cosmos to wake up. And we've shared in all of our sharings here together about the courage of the human heart. And coming back to my sharing at the beginning of traveling and discovering humans are inherently good, I learned the courage of the human heart, because in many places in the world, people did not have the distraction of a lot of material goods like the Western world did. Those people would give me the shirt off their back, even if all they had was a pot, a shirt, and a pair of shorts. They would offer me the shirt off their back. And so very young in my journeys, even as a child, I could see that the way coming forth for the rise of humanity is heart-based and heart-centered. So if it comes from the mind, don't do it anymore, because it will not be sustainable, anything that we create from the mind. And this is where we kind of jump into the sharing about this transformation of consciousness that has come is much more feminine based. And we don't mean feminine as in that war of the masculine feminine. It's more of the feminine qualities, intuition, patience, tenderness, peacefulness. So as inspired as we hold that space and inspired action comes in, those inspired actions are the ones that will create systems and structures for the new consciousness that will sustain.
Thank you for that beautiful share. What's coming to mind when you were sharing all of that is about how people perceive when something bad happens, like 9/11, or when the pandemic started, that it was something really negative. But the way I've seen it is, it's actually when something bad happens, that's usually what actually spurs people to wake up. And 9/11 is what woke me up. Like, I woke up, I started watching all these documentaries and discovering how we were being deceived by the mainstream media. And same thing with the pandemic. Like, a lot of people thought that it was a very negative thing, but I see it as a positive thing because it allowed people to go within, to actually stop the monkey mind, to stop this rat race. They actually were forced to then go within, and a lot of people started self-reflecting on their life and being like, is this serving me? And in my own awakening, what actually spurred my spiritual awakening at my Saturn return was I got fired from my job. And I was doing this vicious cycle of working a job I didn't like and partying on the weekends. And I was just doing that over and over and over for 6 years. And when I look back at that time, I was like, wow, I was like in zombie mode, the autopilot, you know. And when I got fired, I was like, wow, I had all this spaciousness because I didn't have to get up and work a job and then be tired at night. And then the weekend, I just wanted to party because I wanted to escape my reality, because I had no purpose, I had no fulfillment. And so when I got fired, I stayed at home for 6 months. And because I had all this spaciousness, I started to do a lot of self-reflection. And I was like, wow, well, what am I doing with my life? Like, why am I working a job I don't like? Why am I, escaping my reality every weekend by, partying and taking substances to numb myself? And I started to really look at myself. And that was because I had a big break from what I was doing. That cycle ended, that loop ended. And that's what I think COVID did for a lot of people, is it stopped the cycle that they were in. Everyone was in this loop, just going over and over and over, working this 9-to-5 job, and then on the week just watching TV, and the weekends just, spending a little bit of time with their family or whatever, and really living for those 2 days, and the rest of their week was just stuck in this perpetual unhappiness, And so, I was just really been contemplating how every time a big thing happens in the planet that's perceived as negative, it actually turns out to be something positive, and it's actually a gift. And I've started to realize how when bad things happen in my life, that they're actually gifts for transformation. And so when someone triggers me, I'm reacting not because of what they're doing, but because there's something inside of me that is out of balance, or that's distorted, and it's reacting to what they've done, because they're only just being a mirror, and they're showing me about myself. And when I started to realize that teaching, and everything that happens everything is here to help you, as Matt Kahn says. And I really love that, because it means that everything that I experience is there for my transformation. And every person that triggers me is my teacher. And every time that this happens, if I view it as a gift, then I've changed the whole energy behind it. And it made me realize that your whole reality is basically based on your intention and your perception. Because if you see the lens, if you look through the lens, and if your perception, if you see it as a blessing, then it's going to have a positive charge, and you're going to see it as a positive thing. Whereas instead of you see it as, this person is triggering me, this person, and then that's just creating a charge, that's creating you to react and respond, and that will just perpetuate the cycle, because you'll respond in a negative way, then that person will, and it'll become an argument. Whereas if someone triggers you and you respond in a way that wow, thank you so much for showing me that there's something within me that's in distortion that I need to work on, thank you for that gift, that person's going to be like, whoa, I was not expecting that reaction, and that changes the whole field of it. And the same thing with intention. You could, for instance, whenever I'd go through a breakup, yes, I would be hurting that person, but my intention was never to hurt them. My intention was, there's no more growth, this contract's over, I need to move on. And so there's a difference. If you're hurting a person, but your intention is not to hurt them, your intention is for growth, then that's seen as, that is a positive thing. You're helping that person, you're helping your own person. But if you're doing it out of malice, then that changes the whole energy of it. And so that's why I started to learn, especially when you hear about water containing consciousness, and we are containing memory, and the same thing with us as people. I started to realize that everything that I do, it's the intention behind it that counts. And the way I perceive things, it's the perception behind it that counts. And you can literally change the lens that you see things from. And once you do that, your whole world will just completely shift, and you'll start to see everyone in your life as teachers. And my mom is my biggest teacher of patience, because you have to be very patient with her. And since I've been here with Bliss, she's been teaching me about the gene keys, and one of my so it's like a roadmap, really. Your gene keys, it's like your own personal roadmap to discover like what you need to work through to find that inner peace, or that sense of enlightenment or bliss. And impatience is one of my shadows that I need to work through. And my mom always was the only person that I'd lose my patience with the most, and I always used to feel really bad afterwards. But in the beginning, I used to get really frustrated with her and just be like, oh my God. But now that I've seen that it's in my gene key, and how I've chosen my mom to play that role, and how it's also divinely orchestrated, that I'm meant to have my mom in my life teach me that. She is my biggest teacher, and she's really teaching me to have patience. And if I can overcome patience, then I know that I can really shift so much within myself and within the collective, because it's what brings me out of my center all the time. When I'm impatient, I can't find a parking, or I'm impatient because there's traffic, especially here in LA. It brings me out of my center, and it makes my energy lower, like my vibration lower. And so I really started to see my mom like, wow, okay, I really love my mom. And when she starts to trigger that impatience in me, I've now like transmuted it, and I'm like, okay, this is a teaching, and I really want to, and I just breathe through it. And once I've changed my perception on it, I just send her so much love, and I'm not frustrated with her anymore. And I breathe through it, and I thank her for being that incredible teacher in my life. And so yeah, just perception and intention, I think, are so critical in our creation of our reality, because we are the masters of our reality. And to change it from I'm a victim, this person's doing something to me, it's like, no, I orchestrated this. I chose for this event to happen so that I could learn. And once you switch that around, your whole life will change, and you'll stop resisting, and you'll just be in full acceptance, and you'll just choose everything as an opportunity for growth.
So beautiful. Thank you for the sharing. My heart feels so wide open just listening and tuning in to the beautiful articulation and sharing. And I feel so much love in my heart right now. So expansive. And one of the things we were sharing about yesterday is, many years ago in my life, I was having health issues. And so I was going to a wonderful naturopathic office, and I was doing some kind of process. It was probably microcurrent or something. And the technician said, before we start, you have to set an intention with yourself. And it just came out of my mouth. I said, I choose to see my entire life from love. And it simplified my life so much, because until then, I was seeing life through many different emotions. And the metaphor that I've shared is that it was kind of like going to one of those little outlooks. We shared this on the podcast the other day. It's like the birders go to the little posts. You can walk up to these little outlook platforms and watch the birds from different places. And on that day, I just decided to watch my life from the place of love, and to choose that fully, to see everything from love. And that was the greatest catapult in my life, because sometimes I had to go deep inside to find the loving perspective to unlock myself, my consciousness, and my life from my ego. And that's really the process everyone is unlocking, unwrapping, dissolving the contracts and agreements with the roles that we've been playing. And so when I just let love in, it accelerated everything in my life. When I just chose to see everything from love and do the dueling inside of me instead of outside of me, not trying to change matter for matter anymore. Which brings us back to the power of prayer. Peace and prayer. So prayer is intention and peace is coherence. And it's the same technology no matter what words we use. It is in our power for prayer and to allow ourselves and offer ourselves that spaciousness to enjoy the power of prayer, to be in that inward space within us. And again, this is something that the quarantine did. It helped people to stop being distracted, feeling like they have to be on steroids going out every night or whatever it is. This allowed people to rebalance the amount of energy that was being placed in the external world. And so the really cool thing that's happening as people have learned to collapse that energy back within, find a new relationship with the self. This is why the external world is collapsing, because it's all created through thought. It's all a holographic projection that comes from pure source consciousness unified with intention and thought. And so as people continue to fold back inward on themselves, the external world, the way we knew it, keeps dissolving. And we ask ourselves, is any of this even real? And we begin to realize it's not. What is the definition of real? And so the external reality is so malleable now. It's so attentive to our thought. And the coherence piece, the collapsing of the trigger and the charge that you talked about, is essential, because if there's a trigger or a charge, the trigger or the charge exemplifies the old blueprint is still at play. And so when we express from a trigger or charge, we're allowing the ego to perpetuate and continue to play an old role in the play. So we're just kind of sharing mechanics and transmissions in different ways for epiphanies to occur of why we would choose to release who we thought we were, who we think we are, and to become more peaceful, more patient, more calm within the play of Leela. Leela means play. It's a word that indicates that it's imaginary, it's illusory, and we have the capacity in our play to continually experience an expansive nature of the heart. Just like sitting with you and hearing your sharing, I was just feeling such an expansive nature of my heart, because I've dissolved so much of my lenses and perceptions away that we just become pure presence, sitting in the garden together again. And from that place, we return to pure innocence and true love. And the romance and intimacy with creation is what truly lights us up. Our capacity to create real time, to manifest out of thin air, to activate our supernatural capacities, to levitate, to teleport, to have clairvoyance, to be one with our higher self, to read our own personal Akash. This very expansive peace is flowing through these grids because we created them. We created the very grids, we created the very container and the very structure from where we are sharing from today. And so it's like if you build your own house from, the first shovel in the ground up, you have an intimate relationship with it. And that intimate relationship is called love. And this is what we're returning to, is an intimate relationship between physical and non-physical, between spirit and form, between the wave and the particle. And it's what we call cosmic quantum love. We like to call it beyond quantum now. But it is these miracles in cosmic love. And I'm feeling right now like the consciousness of a lot of the children. That very pure consciousness that comes through in a child at play. And so in this transmission, we are invoking, inspiring, inviting, creating, collaborating, calling forth that energy into this creation, into these grids, into this container today. And just like children, when they first come in, have no concept or perception of lack. Lack is a miscreation, a misunderstanding of the cosmic principles of creation, that everything is possible. And with a child, they perceive the world in a different way. So we've been unlocking and releasing ourselves from indoctrination of a very rigid world that was systematically implemented upon a consciousness, upon life within a world. And step by step, we have diligently, meticulously unlocked that to bring us back to this place of pure source consciousness at play. So for all who are gathered, seen and unseen, we infuse this energy of superabundance into our creative dream and our creation. And we invoke and inspire and invite that energy to be flowing freely through everything and everyone, such that the pineal and the pituitary and the thalamic gate in the planetary body and in the physical bodies of everyone is open. And it's open now to release the light in our physical human bodies that transforms the external reality in the blink of an eye.
I really love that share so much. It really made me think of how, when I was talking about how I was working this job that I hated, and I was taking substances and I had addictions and I was smoking weed every day, and the moment that all stopped, it was, first I'd quit my job. Well, I got fired. I got fired. I tend to get really lazy when I'm uninspired at a job that I'm not doing something that I love. Then I'll do like bare minimum, So I definitely deserved to get fired at that job. And basically what happened was, when I had all this spaciousness and I was sitting at home and I started to reflect on my life, I started to think, what do I care about? What do I care about? Like, what puts that fire in my belly? And I think that's the invitation that you're calling is for people to start creating, for people to start searching what their passions are. And I really love this quote that says, your passions aren't random, it's your calling in life. And I really love that because I feel like everybody's got different passions. Everyone loves doing different things. And if we all were doing our passions, imagine how different of a world that would be. And I know the biggest reason why people aren't doing their passions is because of this scarcity consciousness, this lack, this false lack of security of where am I going to pay my rent, how am I going to pay my rent, and this conditioning that we've had from school that you need to go to university, get a degree, get a job. Like my mom's a beautiful spiritual woman, but even she was indoctrinated. She made me give up art at school because, artists don't make money. I had to do science and economics and accounting, and I hated it. I really hated it. And I really, I resented her in the beginning for it because I think I would have been such a beautiful artist if I had carried on since my teens, because my grandmother painted all the presidents, and my dad was an amazing painter, and so was my aunt. And I feel like I had that creative, artistic flair, but because my mom squashed it, I haven't done art since then. And I always resented her for it until I got older and realized that she didn't know any better. She honestly was teaching me to be independent, and she was teaching me to be able, and that is something that I have been able to do. I've been traveling the world. I came to the US with $200 in my pocket. I didn't know anyone here, and I've made a life for myself, and I've been here for 3 to 4 years. And so I appreciate that piece that she instilled in me, that I'm independent. But what this invitation that I think we're both calling is for people to really find their passion and to really find what sets their fight, like what ignites the fire inside them. Because what I started to do during that time was I started to think about what I cared about, and I've always been someone that cares about the planet since I was a little girl. And I would drive past the factory and I'd see all the smoke coming out, and I'd be like, where's that smoke gonna go? And seeing all the trash, like, where's the trash gonna go? It's something I've always cared about. And at that moment, as the universe always sort of responds to our thoughts and our actions, Greenpeace called me because I had a subscription to them. I'd been paying like £5 a month. I was living in England at the time. And they called me and asked me if I wanted to up my donation. And I was like, yeah, I'm happy to up it, but like, I want to get involved. Like, what can I actually do physically? And they told me about volunteering. And I jumped straight into that, and I started volunteering for Greenpeace. And it was the best decision I ever made with my life. It completely changed my life. And because I started doing something that gave me fulfillment and gave me purpose, I was so happy volunteering for Greenpeace. I was so enthusiastic that they offered me a job, and I started working for them. And I just loved speaking to people about the planet and what Greenpeace did. And they're still one of my favorite organizations because of so many different changes that they've made in the world. And instantaneously, because I started doing my purpose, I gave up all my addictions. I gave up all my addictions to wanting to drink on the weekend, to smoking every day, and I started living a vegan lifestyle. I started really taking care of my waste, and I started really looking at how my actions were affecting the earth. And it was literally instantaneous because I started doing something that filled me with purpose. And I think that's the call that we're trying to give to the collective now, is to find your purpose, find what makes you happy, because once you do, everything else will fall into place. Your addictions will fall away. You won't want to, because the only reason people have addictions is because they're not living their purpose. They're not in their center. They're trying to escape, soften the blow by taking drugs or taking alcohol or having food habits, food addictions, and watching the TV because they want to escape their reality because they're not happy. And that's why I think it's so important, and why we're having this invitation to find your passion, because once you do, and once you find your purpose and you live your purpose, everything else will fall into place, and the universe will correspond to that thought, to that action, to that desire, if you just start doing it, just in any small way. We talked about this the other day, just taking a physical action to start doing what you love, you will just see the synchronicities and the miracles that will occur. You'll meet the people that you're meant to meet. All my friends were, drinking and taking a lot of drugs. And when I started working for Greenpeace, I met my soul family, my tribe, people that cared about the planet. And they were all the same, living the same lifestyles. That we were all sober. We were all, vegans. We were all just took so much joy in doing something that was being in service. And it just filled us with so much fulfillment. And it was so rewarding. Every night I would go to bed knowing that I did something to make the world a better place. And that, for me, just instantaneously took all my addictions away. And so I'm really calling that on for the collective to start doing that. And even if it looks like just a hobby or doing something in your spare time, just start doing it. And the more you put your energy into this hobby or into this passion, it will work out where you'll start to meet the people that you need to meet that have the same hobby, or you'll start to have opportunities will come up. Miracles will just happen. It just happens that way. And the universe will correspond energetically, because the universe and the way the energy works of the universe is it corresponds to people being in alignment and being in your center. So once you start being in alignment, that's when all these synchronicities and that's when all these miracles happen. And it does take courage, it does take a leap of faith, and it does take trust. But if you just take that one small step, the rewards are just like astronomical. And I would never think that I would be here in California doing what I love best, doing with an amazing being in front of me, and the most beautiful reflection of myself. This completely happened by miracle, because I told the universe that this is the year of the tiger, which I'm the year of the tiger, that I was going to start saying yes to what I love doing. And I'm doing it. So it's really great. So really calling on the collective to please do that.
Oh my gosh, heart so wide open. Such an awesome share. And I'm feeling this is a really powerful time to just like wind this transmission down from here, and to say, to pick up from your sharing. It's so beautiful what you shared, that when you found what you loved, the things that you were doing that weren't serving naturally fell away. And that's the invitation. It's like there's this expression, if we only knew. If people say that, if I only knew. And we can trust now, because we've gone through collectively together a cleansing, purging, purification process that was absolutely necessary for the Western world. Lots of places in the world did not participate in the creation that played out for the Western world, called a pandemic. And to just continue to draw the consciousness into the perfection of the journey that we created for ourselves to experience here. And love really guides the way. There's an expression to risk it all for love. And that's what we both did in our lives. We risked it all for love. And that means to make choices in a different way. The choices to send text messages that the ego says don't send. Choices to end relationships and begin new ones that the ego might resist again and again. So there's never anything or anyone that we've ever had to, quotation marks, fight outside of ourselves. The journey that we have always been on is to bring our energy back to the true self, which is beyond an experiment, an experience we created called duality or separation and all of that. And so as our energy comes back into wholeness, by having the courage to do what you said, You released and let go of things that didn't serve. So you got a synchronistic, spontaneous phone call that changed your life. The person who was calling you was calling to invite you to send more money when they probably had no idea that their call was about to change your entire life. And this is the interconnectedness of all things, and why we will see in time languaging absolute acceleration now, absolute joy, absolute bliss, absolute synchronicity as we continue to trust. This is why the universe had to come in and help people to release a whole lot of baggage, a whole lot of contracts, a whole lot of relationships, a whole lot of jobs, a whole lot of structures on the planet called borders, boundaries, taxes, passports. That's why humanity had to be pushed so hard to come into the awareness, the revelation, and the alignment, the acknowledgement that there is something cosmic going on. And whether or not we resist it, this cosmic transformation will continue on. So, all of this sharing that we do is to share things that have assisted us to ride the wave, to experience it consciously, participatory, and in the most ecstatic, blissful way. And more of our family, as we share, we just keep saying, come on, jump in. It's not so scary. It's not so bad. Real estate markets, economies, fictional wars posted on news media, false narratives, and things that were guiding the consciousness away from the truth of who we are will all dissolve away, because it is the end. It's not only the end of an era, it's the end of the fabric of that time, gravity, space creation. And it's just the final casting off, dissolving, removing, just like when a baby comes out and they still have the embryonic sac around them, or a butterfly comes out of the cocoon. These are the final phases. Most of our heart is burgeoning wide open. We're in the awareness of this consciousness that is greater than all of us. And it's just the final pieces falling off of possession, of ownership, of consumption, of anything at all that covets energy in such a way that it is gullish, coveting it for itself. And that's just these final remnants of the ego that covets something for itself. And all of creation's children are awakening. Humanity is awakening together. And so let those blinders fall off and just jump into this ocean of creation together. And as we do what you said about one small town, everyone comes together. Everyone brings the resources they have to bring together. And that's what we are inviting, inspiring, and invoking from me and you and all of us. Show up with what we have to share in a collective way. Whatever our gift is. Some people's gift is to make money. Some people's gifts is to do podcasts, share transmissions, make art. When we truly show up in that way, there is a transmission that is guiding. It's coming through the feminine voice. Maybe we call it Sophia. And it is reorganizing all the systems and all the structures. So the final thing we would invite to all of life is welcome and listen to and trust and receive the wisdom of the feminine voice.
poignant for these times. And really, yes, just echoing what you said, just really calling in for everybody to get in touch with their feminine wisdom, to get in touch with their intuition, and to really go deep within themselves, to do the shadow work, let go of what's not serving, and find your passion. Literally, those are just the steps that will create the new earth right now. And that is how you create it, is just by living it. And the more of us that live it, the more we will reach that critical mass and have these epiphanies, and bam, everybody's living in the new earth. So it's here at our fingertips. And if you're listening to this and watching this, you have been guided to watch this, and it means that you are a steward of the new earth, and it means that you have a duty and responsibility to step up now and to let go of the fear, let go of the illusions. If you're here, you obviously have a sense of awakening, and you have a spiritual consciousness. Otherwise, I don't think you would have been brought to this transmission. And to now let go of what no longer serves you, and to just trust in the divine plan, trust in yourself, trust in the higher self, and to just stop acting small. This is really the year that we're calling on the creators to really step up, share their gifts, find their passions, and to just do it. To just do it. We cannot act small anymore. We cannot sit in the shadows anymore. This is really the time now. We are calling all these beautiful beings out there that are just reflections of us to really step up, step into the unknown, and trust, because there is no other way to create this new earth, and there's no other way to have purpose. There is no other way to have bliss and enlightenment unless you are living your purpose. And so that's all we're calling on. You're doing your purpose. You're going to have a vibration that's high. You're going to have an open heart, and your consciousness will affect and ripple the consciousness of the whole collective. And so we cannot be distracted anymore. We cannot act small. We cannot live in fear. We are now the stewards of the new earth, and the new earth is now. We need you now. The time is now. There is only now. And so really just calling on every single person that's watching this to really step up. We need you. The world needs you. We love you. Thank you.
That is profound. That's a call out. And to complete this amazing, wonderful, miraculous transmission now, I would just bring this final piece, that the feminine voice is within us all. And if we don't resonate with the words masculine, feminine, I shared this before many years ago, inviting the guidance, please give me other words. The guidance said the masculine is power and the feminine is love. And so really trust the love in our hearts to open up. There is nothing, including nothing, to fear outside of ourselves. We love we so much. If this love stream is inspiring, please share it. That's called gifting. And if you want to support this love stream as well, we will share ways that you can begin to support this message and this voice of Unity Transmissions and these conscious conversations that Tess, Athena, and We Bliss are sharing and collaborating on together. And just, any way that people are guided to support, sharing it out is wonderful. Please bring your friends and your family to these conversations and transmissions with us, and just let this great energy in the words and in the space between the words flow out to all life, to everything and everyone. We love we. Aho matakwe asen. Aho.
Oh.